My parents did not break into my house. They did something worse. They forged my name, sold the only home my grandfather ever left me, and used the money to send my unemployed brother to Cancun for a luxury proposal trip. My name is Maren Whitlock. I am 36, a senior structural engineer, and on the day the deed said I signed away my house, I was standing on a bridge site 200 miles away with a badge log, a payroll record, and a time-stamped photo proving it. My mother thought a fake signature would make me look selfish. What she did not know was that Grandpa's trust had one clause waiting for anyone greedy enough to touch what was never theirs. Chapter 1: The house my grandfather built into a promise. I was 36 years old when I learned that a house could be stolen without a broken window, without a crowbar, without one muddy footprint on the porch. All it took was a family that knew where I kept a spare key, a mother who believed grief gave her ownership, and a father who had spent his whole life confusing peace with surrender. My name is Maren Whitlock. I am a senior structural engineer at Ridgeline Civil Engineering, which sounds colder than it feels. People hear structural engineer and imagine steel, concrete, load tables, inspection reports, and hard hats. They are not wrong. My job is to find weakness before weakness becomes collapse. I read cracks the way other people read moods. I know when a beam is carrying more than it was designed to carry. I know when a joint looks fine from the outside, but has already started failing underneath. For most of my life, that was how I lived too. Quietly, carefully. Carrying more than anyone admitted they had placed on me. In April of 2025, Ridgeline assigned me as the senior lead on the Columbia River Bridge retrofit, a 7-week project running from April 15th through June 3rd near the Portland and Vancouver line. It was the kind of project I had worked toward for years. High visibility, high pressure. Daily badge logs, load tests, safety reviews, field reports, and enough moving parts to make one mistake expensive. My project manager Priya Raman trusted me because I did not panic. Owen Mercer, one of our field engineers, used to joke that I could stare at a misaligned gauge the way a priest stared at a confession. I did not raise my voice. I did not rush. I checked the numbers twice and then a third time if my gut told me to. That was the woman my family thought they understood. The calm one, the practical one. The daughter who would be fine. The house on Juniper Mill Road was the only place where I never had to be fine. It sat in Bend, Oregon, on a quiet street where the wind carried the smell of juniper and dry earth in the summer. White siding, green front door, a deep porch that caught evening light, and a wooden swing hanging from the left side of the porch roof. My grandfather, Elias Whitlock, carved EW 2012 into the underside of that swing with a pocket knife. He kept sharper than most people kept their excuses. Grandpa Elias bought the house in 2011 for $214,000. He was already retired then, though retired never meant still. He had been a carpenter first, then a civil construction supervisor, the kind of man who could look at a crooked step and tell you which winter had warped it. In 2012, he rebuilt half the house with his own hands. He replaced the porch boards, fixed the roofline, rewired the mudroom with help from a licensed electrician, and sanded the kitchen cabinets until they looked like they had been waiting for him their whole lives. He taught me that houses remember care. If you patched something badly, the house would tell on you. If you rushed, it would sag. If you respected it, it would hold. When I graduated in 2013, he handed me a brass key on a plain ring. We stood on that porch, my cap still in my hand, my mother watching from the walkway with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Grandpa put the key in my palm and said, "A house is a promise you keep to yourself." I did not know then how long that sentence would stay with me. My mother, Marla Whitlock Vance, never forgave him for that promise. She was 61 in 2025, just a regular volunteer at Juniper Chapel Church. The kind of woman who brought casseroles before anyone asked and told stories about family sacrifice, as if she had invented the concept. To other people, she was warm, faithful, selfless. To me, she was something more complicated. She loved being seen as a good mother, but she had always measured love in control. She was Elias Whitlock's daughter, and in her mind that meant the Juniper Mill house should have passed through her hands first. Bloodline mattered when it benefited her. Responsibility mattered when it could be assigned to someone else. My father, Grant Vance, was 64 and recently retired from insurance. He was not a loud man, and that made people mistake him for a gentle one. But there is a kind of weakness that does as much damage as cruelty. Dad avoided conflict by feeding the person most likely to explode. In our family, that was never me. It was my younger brother Caleb. Caleb was 31, old enough to know better and practiced enough not to. He had lasted 8 months in real estate sales before quitting because, according to him, the market was rigged against people with vision. He owed $27,400 across 3 credit cards, but he still talked about future deals, future investments, future breakthroughs. My mother called him sensitive. My father called him unlucky. I called him what he was only in my head because saying it out loud would have made me the problem. Every time Caleb failed, Mom said he just needed a little help. Every time I struggled, Dad said Maren will be fine. That sentence followed me through college, through internships, through the winter I worked nights to cover rent, through the year my car needed repairs I could barely afford. Maren will be fine. It sounded like praise if you did not listen closely. It was really permission. Permission for everyone else to take more from me because I had proven I could survive with less. When Grandpa Elias died in September of 2023 at 82, I felt something in me go quiet. His funeral was small but full. Old contractors came in clean shirts. Neighbors brought food. A former apprentice stood by the back wall and cried into his hands. My mother cried the loudest. She leaned into people, accepted tissues, whispered that losing a father changes you. After the service, while people were folding chairs in the church hall, I heard her speaking to Aunt Celia near the coffee urn. She said the house should have stayed with the daughter, not skipped to the granddaughter. I pretended not to hear. Grief makes people ugly sometimes. I told myself that was all it was. A week later, Harold Brandt called me into his office. Harold had been Grandpa's estate attorney for years, a narrow man in his late 50s with silver glasses and a voice that made panic feel premature. He explained that Grandpa had placed the Juniper Mill Road house into the Elias Whitlock Residence Trust back in 2018. I was the beneficiary and successor trustee. There was also a family reserve trust, with conditional distributions of $52,000 each for my mother and Caleb. Harold told me to read everything carefully, especially the trust protections. I remember nodding, trying to look like I was absorbing every word. But grief made the legal language swim. I understood the important part, or thought I did. Grandpa had trusted me with the house. The original document stayed with Harold. I took home copies and put them in the bottom drawer of the small desk in Grandpa's office at Juniper Mill. I told myself I would read them properly when I could breathe again. A few months before he died, Grandpa had said something I thought was one of his dry little jokes. He told me he had not just repaired that house with lumber and nails. He had built a fence around it with paper. I laughed then. He did not. Before I left for the bridge project in April 2025, I drove to Bend to check on the house. The place smelled faintly of cedar and dust. I ran water through the kitchen sink, checked the thermostat, walked the porch, and sat for a minute on the swing with EW 2012 beneath my hand. Mom asked for the spare key so she could water the plants, check the pipes, and pick up mail. Dad asked for the alarm code, in case a storm knocked something loose or the power went strange. I gave them both because they were my parents. Because I was leaving for 7 weeks. And because part of me still believed family could be trusted with access without mistaking it for ownership. I did not give them the original trust documents. Those were still with Harold. I did not give them permission to sell anything. I did not give them the house. 3 days before I left, Mom stood in Grandpa's old office doorway and asked where I kept the copies of his paperwork. She said she only wanted to know in case something happened while I was away. I pointed to the bottom drawer of the desk. She nodded and smiled. At the time, I thought she was trying to be helpful. The morning I drove out of Bend, I stopped one last time at Juniper Mill Road. The house was quiet under the pale spring sun. The green front door needed a little paint near the handle. The porch rail could use stain. The swing moved slightly in the wind, slow and steady like it was breathing. I locked the door with the brass key Grandpa had given me 12 years earlier. I remember standing there with my travel bag over my shoulder, thinking I would be back in 7 weeks. I would finish the bridge load test, come home, fix the porch light, sand the rail, maybe finally read the trust documents the way Harold had told me to. I believed I had locked the house behind me. What I did not understand was that the most dangerous thing I left in Bend was not a loose pipe, or an old alarm system, or a stack of papers in a desk drawer. It was the person I had trusted with the spare key. Chapter 2: The Sold Sign on Juniper Mill Road. The first week on the Columbia River Bridge retrine was the kind of week that leaves your body tired before your mind has permission to admit it. Every morning I clipped my badge to my vest, stepped through the temporary access gate near the Portland and Vancouver line, and let the scanner record my arrival. The system logged every entry and exit, down to the minute. At the time, it felt like bureaucracy. Later, it would become one of the only reasons my family could not rewrite the truth. Priya Rahman ran the field office with a quiet intensity I respected. She had the rare ability to listen without softening the facts. Owen Mercer worked beside me most days, checking readings, adjusting notes, and making jokes when the wind off the river got sharp enough to cut through our jackets. We reviewed load sequences, tension readings, safety clearances, and the kind of small inconsistencies that only look small until something fails. For a while, work did what work had always done for me. It gave me structure. I could stand on steel, look at numbers, and know what each number meant. Family was never that clean. The first strange call came from my mother 3 days into the project. She asked me to repeat the alarm code for Juniper Mill Road, even though I had written it down for her before I left. Her voice was light, almost too light. She said she did not want to set it off by accident if she stopped by to water the plants. I gave it to her again. 2 days later, Dad called to say the internet at the house was acting weird. He said he had unplugged the router and plugged it back in, but my security cameras might show offline for a bit. He made it sound practical, like he was helping. I was on my lunch break, standing beside a stack of temporary decking panels, and I remember feeling a small pinch of unease. Not fear, not yet. Just the kind of hairline crack you mark for later inspection. Then Caleb called. My brother almost never called me unless he needed something or wanted me to hear how unfair life had been to him. That time he asked vague questions about house stuff and family money. He wanted to know whether Grandpa had left anything else, whether trusts were hard to change, whether Mom had ever talked to me about what was fair. I told him if he had a legal question, he should call Harold Brandt. He laughed and said I always made everything sound like a contract. That same night, I saw Angela Pierce's story online. Angela was Caleb's girlfriend, a polished hotel marketing manager with glossy hair and a habit of posting every good angle of her life. Her story showed a beach resort link, blue water, and a caption about someone finally planning something big for us. A few hours later, Caleb posted photos of a Cancún villa with a private plunge pool and a dinner package that cost more than my first car payment. His caption said big life reset coming. Caleb was unemployed. Caleb owed $27,400 across 3 credit cards. Caleb once borrowed money from Mom to renew his car registration and called it short-term liquidity. Still, I closed the app and went back to my field notes. I had a bridge to help keep standing. I told myself rich people booked vacations on points. I told myself Angela might have paid. I told myself a lot of things that made the next week possible. Then a Bend realtor texted me. She said she was following up to see whether the owner had reconsidered listing the Juniper Mill Road property. I stared at the message in the trailer office while rain ticked against the metal steps outside. I wrote back that the house was not for sale and had never been for sale. 10 minutes later, Mom sent me a heart and a message saying not to worry. Honey, we are handling everything. I read that sentence 3 times. On May 9th, I was on site before sunrise. My badge log recorded me at 6:32 a.m. The river looked gray under the morning cloud cover, and the wind kept pushing my hair loose under my hard hat. Owen took a time-stamped photo around mid-morning while I was crouched near a gauge, checking a reading that refused to settle. He sent it to our group chat with a joke about me interrogating steel until it confessed. My payroll record showed a full shift. My exit badge scan was 7:08 p.m. At the time, May 9th was just another long day. My feet hurt. My hands smelled like metal and dust. I ate a protein bar for dinner in the hotel parking lot because I was too tired to sit in a restaurant. 1 week later, on May 16th, Nora Bell sent me the photo. Nora was 69, a retired elementary school teacher who lived 2 houses down from Juniper Mill Road and knew more about that street than any security system ever could. Her message came through while I was standing near the work zone, one glove tucked under my arm, hard hat on, traffic noise rolling behind me. The photo showed my grandfather's front yard. The green door was in the background. The porch was there. The swing was there, small and familiar in the corner of the frame. And in the grass, near the walkway, stood a real estate sign with a red Sold Rider across it. Under the photo, Nora had written, "Maren, is this real?" For a second, everything around me kept moving except me. Owen was talking to someone near the lift. A truck backed up with a sharp beep. The river wind pushed at the papers on my clipboard. I could hear all of it, but none of it reached the part of me that had gone cold. I typed back with hands that did not feel like mine. "No, I did not sell my house," Nora answered almost immediately. She said a moving truck had come the previous Saturday. My mother had stood in the driveway pointing men toward the garage and side door. Dad had told one of the neighbors that I had finally made a practical decision. Nora said she thought it was strange, but she did not want to pry into family business. Family business. I stepped behind a temporary barrier and called my mother. She answered on the 4th ring, cheerful in a careful way. I asked her why there was a sold sign in front of Juniper Mill Road. There was a pause. Then she said the market had been good. She said the house was sitting empty. She said I was never there anymore. She said sometimes family had to make decisions before opportunities disappeared. I asked who signed the deed. She sighed like I had disappointed her. "Maren, you are making this sound ugly," she said. In the background, Caleb's voice cut through, loud and irritated. "Tell her the Cancun package is non-refundable." The world narrowed to that sentence. I asked my mother if she sold my grandfather's house to pay for Caleb's vacation. Her voice changed then. The softness came off. She said that house should have been mine. She said her father should never have skipped her. She said I had a career, a salary, a life, while my brother had been struggling for months. She said Caleb needed something to look forward to. She said I had always been the strong one, and strong people were supposed to understand sacrifice. I looked down at my boots, dust on the leather, concrete grit at the seams. I thought about Grandpa's key. I thought about the swing. I thought about my mother saying sacrifice when she meant theft. I did not scream. I did not threaten her. I only said, "Enjoy the trip, Mom." Then I hung up. That night, in my hotel room outside Portland, I opened my laptop and went to the Deschutes County Recorder portal. I knew the parcel number by memory. I had written it on enough utility forms, insurance updates, and tax notices. When the record loaded, my mouth went dry. A warranty deed had been recorded. Juniper Mill Road had been sold to Daniel and Rebecca Prescott for $472,000. The seller was listed as Maren Whitlock. The signature date was May 9, 2025. I stared at the date until it stopped looking like a date and started looking like a weapon. May 9th was the day I had entered the bridge site at 6:32 a.m. and left at 7:08 p.m. May 9th was the day Owen took that photo of me beside the gauge. May 9th was a full shift, a payroll record, a badge log, a dozen people who had seen me on site. I had not signed a deed in Bend because I had not been in Bend. I opened the preview document with hands that had steadied steel in high wind and still could not stop trembling. At the bottom was a notary acknowledgement, Tessa Calloway, my cousin, my mother's niece, a part-time notary public who worked the front desk at a dental office and had 2 kids, a tired smile, and a medical bill problem my mother had mentioned more than once. The room seemed to tilt, not dramatically, not like in movies, but just enough that I had to put one hand on the desk. This was not confusion. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not family making a decision. This was paper. And paper could be traced. I called Harold Brandt. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a silence long enough that I could hear the hotel air conditioner click on. Then he said not to confront them again until we had copies. His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it I had never heard before. Anger, maybe. Or recognition. He told me to send him screenshots, the parcel number, Nora's photo, Mom's messages, and anything Caleb had written about the trip. He reminded me that Juniper Mill Road was not simply a house Grandpa had left me in a sentimental way. It was held by the Elias Whitlock Residence Trust. I was the successor trustee. My mother, my father, and my brother had no authority to sell it. Harold said he would request a certified copy of the deed and find out whether the closing file contained a power of attorney or certificate of trust. If those existed and my signatures were forged, he said this was no longer a family dispute. The next morning I went back to the bridge. Priya saw my face before I said a word. She asked if I needed to go home. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to drive straight to Bend, rip the sign out of the grass, and ask my mother what kind of woman sells her daughter's home for her son's vacation. Instead, I looked out at the bridge, at the test schedule, at the workers waiting for my sign-off, and understood the bitter irony. The thing keeping me away from home was also proving I had never signed it away. I stayed. I finished the day. I saved my badge records. I asked Owen to keep the time-stamped photo. I forwarded payroll confirmation to my personal email. That evening, Harold called while I was sitting alone in my car outside the field office. He had found what I was afraid he would find. A limited power of attorney had been submitted. So had a certificate of trust. Both carried my name. Both carried signatures that pretended to be mine. Both had been notarized by Tessa Calloway. Harold said the words slowly, as if he wanted each one to land exactly where it belonged. Maren, this is not a bad family decision anymore. This is a felony paper trail. Chapter 3, the paper trail they didn't think I'd read. I did not sleep much after Harold said that. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed with my laptop open, my work boots still on, and watched the cursor blink beside a folder I had named Juniper Mill. Nora's photograph went in first. Then the county recorder screenshot. Then my mother's message, "We're handling everything." Then Caleb's resort post, saved before he could think better of it and delete it. By morning, exhaustion had made my face look calm again. The bridge did not care that my family had forged my name. Steel never paused for grief. The load test schedule held, so I held with it. Priya noticed anyway. She found me outside the field office, coffee untouched in my hands, staring at the river. "Do you need to go home?" "I need to," I said, "but not yet." She studied me for a second. Priya was not the kind of manager who asked questions for gossip. She only asked what would affect the work. "Is this legal trouble?" "It's family trouble that turned into legal trouble." She nodded once. "Then document where you are, every day, every hour you can." That was why I respected her. Owen helped me pull badge records for May 9th, and when I asked if he still had the photo from that morning, he sent it again without joking this time. The timestamp sat at the top of the image, clear and ugly in its usefulness. I was crouched beside a gauge in a hard hat, one glove tucked under my arm, 200 miles from Bend on the day my signature supposedly sold my grandfather's house. That enough to prove it? Owen asked. It proves where I was, I said. Now I need to prove where I wasn't. On May 18th, I drove back to Bend. Harold called while I was still on the highway. His voice was steady but sharper than usual. Do not go to your parents' house first. I wasn't planning to. Do not text threats. Do not post anything. Do not argue in writing. Bring me copies, statements, dates, and names. Anger feels good for 10 minutes. Evidence lasts longer, I know. I'm saying it because you're about to stand in front of your grandfather's house and see strangers inside it. He was right. Juniper Mill Road looked almost normal from half a block away. That was the cruelest part. The green door was still there. The porch still caught the afternoon light. The swing still hung from the left side, EW 2012 hidden underneath the seat where Grandpa had carved it. But the sold sign stood in the yard like a wound dressed up for photographs. There were rolls of contractor paper near the front steps. A stack of cabinet boxes leaned against the porch rail. The curtains I remembered were gone. Through the window, I could see part of the kitchen wall opened up. My key was in my hand before I realized I had reached for it. I did not use it. That house was in a legal fog now, and Daniel and Rebecca Prescott had walked into it believing the title was clean. I would not become another person who treated the house like rules did not apply. The front door opened, and a man in jeans and a gray sweatshirt stepped onto the porch. He looked mid-40s, tired in the way teachers often look tired, as if he had spent the week being patient with people who did not deserve it. Can I help you? My name is Maren Whitlock. His expression changed before I finished the sentence. A woman appeared behind him, still in navy scrubs, her hair pulled into a loose bun. Rebecca Prescott. Her eyes moved from my face to the sold sign and back again. Daniel said carefully, "You're the seller." "No," I said. "I'm the person whose name was used." The air seemed to leave the porch. Rebecca gripped the doorframe. "What does that mean?" "It means I never signed the deed. I never agreed to sell this house, and the house was held in my grandfather's trust. My attorney is already involved." Daniel's face went pale, then hard, not with guilt, but fear. "We bought this through Cascade Title. We had title insurance, we had a closing packet. Everything was notarized." "I believe you," I said, and that was the first moment Rebecca's eyes filled. She pressed a hand over her mouth. "We put everything into this. We thought this was our last house." I looked past her at the torn kitchen wall, at the dust on the floorboards Grandpa had once polished by hand, and I had to swallow before I could answer. "You're victims too," I said. "My family did this to all of us." Daniel let me see the closing packet at their kitchen table. I did not sit in Grandpa's old chair. I stood because sitting felt too much like surrender. The packet was neat, professional, and horrifying. Warranty deed, limited power of attorney, certificate of trust, copy of an old scan of my driver's license. Seller affidavit stating I no longer use the property and wish to sell remotely. Every page carried the same lie dressed in legal language, and every signature pretending to be mine looked like someone had copied me from a version of myself that no longer existed. I pointed to the POA. "This signature looks like one I used years ago." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" "In 2022, I signed insurance paperwork after a car change. I kept a copy in the desk at Juniper Mill." Rebecca whispered, "Someone got it from inside the house." I did not say my mother's name. I did not have to. At the bottom of the acknowledgement page was Tessa Calloway's notary seal. My cousin, my mother's niece. The same Tessa who used to bring her kids to Thanksgiving and apologize for being late because life was always too expensive. Daniel pushed the packet toward me. "Take pictures of anything you need." "I need you to call Cascade Title today," I said. "Tell them there is a forged deed claim and that Harold Brandt will contact them. Do not spend another dollar on renovations until you speak with them." Rebecca nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Are we going to lose the house?" I did not lie to her. "I don't know. If the deed is void, probably. But title insurance exists for this. You should not lose everything because of what my family did." She covered her face then, and for a moment the revenge I thought I wanted tasted like ash. My mother had not just stolen from me. She had sold strangers a future that might never belong to them. Harold's office smelled like paper, coffee, and old wood. He scanned the closing packet in silence, page by page, then saved it in 3 places while I watched. Cass Title was fooled by layers, he said. Not just one bad deed. A power of attorney, a certificate, an ID scan, an affidavit, a notarization. This is why it got through. "So they built a fake bridge," I said. He looked up. "And now we test the load." By May 21st, Harold had filed a lease pendants against Juniper Mill Road. He explained that it would not hand me the keys back overnight, but it would freeze the title enough to stop resale or refinancing. Cascade Title opened a claim for Daniel and Rebecca. Harold also contacted the Deschutes County Real Estate Fraud Unit. Detective Luis Alvarez met us in a county office that looked too plain for the amount of damage sitting in my folder. He did not promise arrests. He did not call it open and shut. He opened a case file and asked for proof. Timeline first, he said. I gave him badge records, payroll confirmation, Owen's time-stamped photo, Nora's messages, the deed, the POA, the certificate, Caleb's Cancun messages, and my mother's texts. Alvarez turned the pages slowly. Do you plan to confront them? My mother is pushing for a family meeting. Then before you walk into that room, make sure every document is copied, certified, and already in your attorney's hands. Harold nodded. It will be that evening. My phone rang from a number I did not recognize. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. A woman was crying. Maren, it's Tessa. I stood very still. She breathed hard into the phone. I didn't know it was going to go this far. Did I appear before you on May 9th? Tessa. No, the word came out small. You put your seal on a lie. She said you knew. Your mom said you were too busy to sign in person. She said it was just family paperwork. That is how far it went, I said. She hung up. By then, Mom had changed tactics. In the family group chat, she wrote that I was punishing everyone over a house I barely used. At Juniper Chapel, she told Pastor Elaine Brooks that Caleb was struggling, and that Grandpa would have wanted the family taken care of. Aunt Celia texted me that maybe there was a way to settle quietly. Pastor Elaine left me a voicemail saying she was praying for reconciliation. I sent one message to the group chat. Who signed the power of attorney? No one answered. Dad called later that night. If you keep doing this, you're going to destroy your mother. Did you sign anything for that sale, Dad? He exhaled through his nose. Your brother needed help, and you were never going to give it. I saved the voicemail. Caleb texted 6 minutes later. Furious that the Cancun package was non-refundable, that Angela was expecting a proposal dinner, that I was ruining the only good thing he had planned all year. He gave me the number himself, $38,600, as if the price made him the victim. The document examiner's preliminary report came the next morning. The signatures on the deed, the POA, and the certificate did not match mine. Tessa's notary journal had no valid entry for May 9th. Harold called me back to his office. This time, there was only one document on the table, Grandpa's 2018 trust. He turned it toward me and tapped a paragraph I had never read closely enough. If a beneficiary attempts to obtain, transfer, encumber, or convert trust property through fraud, coercion, forged instrument, or undue influence, he said, that beneficiary forfeits distribution from the Family Reserve Trust. I looked at him. How much? $52,000 each. Your mother and Caleb. For the first time since Nora's photo, I felt something inside the panic go still. Grandpa had not just left me a house. He had left instructions for what to do when greed came looking for it. My phone buzzed on Harold's desk. It was Mom Sunday. 3 p.m., your father's house. The whole family will be there. It's time you stop hiding behind lawyers and explain why you're doing this to us. I looked at the folder, thick now with signatures, records, timestamps, statements, and lies. My mother thought she had called a family meeting. She had built herself a witness stand. Chapter 4, the family meeting that became their confession. By Sunday afternoon, I had learned that a person can walk into a trap calmly if she knows where every wire is buried. My parents' house sat on the other side of Bend, a beige 2-story place with trimmed shrubs, a flag by the porch, and a backyard my mother had always treated like a stage. When I pulled up at 2:57, there were already too many cars in the driveway. Aunt Celia's blue Subaru. 2 cousins I had not spoken to since Christmas. A gray sedan I recognized from Juniper Chapel. Tessa Calloway's compact SUV sat near the curb, crooked between the lines. I turned off the engine and kept both hands on the wheel for a moment. The folder sat on the passenger seat. Harold had made 3 copies of everything. Detective Alvarez had the digital file. Cascade title had been notified. The certified copies were not in my mother's reach. Nothing on those pages could be erased by tears, denial, or a casserole dish full of moral pressure. Still, my body knew I was walking into my childhood pattern. Marla would talk first. Grant would sigh. Caleb would act wounded. Someone would ask me to be the bigger person. I had been the bigger person so many times that my family had started using my spine as furniture. The backyard smelled like charcoal and lemon bars. My mother had set out a pitcher of lemonade, paper napkins, folding chairs, and a long picnic table under the shade of the maple. It looked like a church social. It felt like an ambush. Marla wore a pale blue blouse and her Sunday cross necklace. Grant stood near the grill, turning empty tongs in his hand. Caleb leaned against the patio rail, wearing a new watch that caught the light every time he checked his phone. Tessa sat at the edge of the porch with her hands locked together, her face so pale I could see the fear before she looked up. Aunt Celia gave me a small, worried smile. Pastor Elaine Brooks stood near the lemonade, silent, watching everything with the careful face of someone who had been told only one version of the story. My mother opened her arms like I had arrived late to a reunion. Maren, thank you for coming. We need to talk like a family. I set the folder on the picnic table and did not hug her. We can talk. That was the first time her smile faltered. Marla took her place at the head of the table without being asked. She had always done that. She began softly, which was how I knew she had rehearsed. You have always been strong, Maren. You have a good job, a good salary, your own life. Caleb has been struggling. Your father and I were trying to help him reset before he fell apart completely. Caleb rolled his eyes like his collapse was my inconvenience. Mom continued. Families mean sacrifice. Your grandfather understood that. He would be ashamed to see you dragging your own mother through lawyers over a house you barely used. Aunt Celia looked at me with real sadness. Maren, maybe there's a way to settle this without destroying everyone. I could feel the old reflex rise in me, the urge to explain gently, to make my pain small enough for everyone else to tolerate. I did not follow it. Grant cleared his throat. The house was sitting empty. Your brother needed something good. Your house paid for a little fun. That's all. The yard went quiet. I looked at my father. Can you say that again? His face tightened. He realized too late that he had stopped sounding like a mediator and started sounding like a witness. Caleb pushed off the railing. It's just a house. You weren't even using it. I turned to him then. He looked irritated, not ashamed. The difference mattered. He was not sorry the house had been sold. He was angry that the sale had become complicated. Mom lifted a hand as if blessing the room. My father should have left it to me. I am his daughter. I met her eyes. He knew that, and he made his choice anyway. Her mouth hardened. I opened the folder. Before anyone could move, I said, everything in this folder has been scanned, certified, and sent to Harold Brandt and the Deschutes County Real Estate Fraud Unit. Tessa made a small sound from the porch. I took out the warranty deed first and laid it flat on the table. This deed says Juniper Mill Road was sold to Daniel and Rebecca Prescott for $472,000. It says I signed it on May 9, 2025. No one spoke. I placed the badge log beside it. At 6:32 that morning, I scanned into the Columbia River Bridge retrofit site near Portland and Vancouver. At 7:08 that night, I scanned out. Then Owen's time-stamped photo. This is me on site that morning, checking a gauge. Payroll confirms a full shift. Priya Raman and Owen Mercer can both verify I was there. Caleb shifted his weight. Grant looked away. I placed the preliminary document examiner report on top of the deed. The signatures on the deed, the limited power of attorney, and the certificate of trust do not match mine. I set down the power of attorney next. This document says I gave Dad authority to sign for me. Grant's jaw clenched, then the certificate. This one says Dad had authority over the Elias Whitlock Residence Trust. Aunt Celia leaned forward. Grant? He did not answer. I laid down the notary acknowledgement. Tessa notarized all of it. Tessa started crying before I looked at her. My mother turned sharply. Tessa, don't. But Tessa was already breaking. She told me you knew, Tessa said. Her voice cracked. She said you were too busy to sign in person. She said it was just family paperwork. I looked at her. Did I appear before you on May 9th? Tessa covered her mouth. Tears slid over her fingers. No. The word landed harder than any shout could have. Mom stood up so fast her chair scraped the patio. This is cruel. You are humiliating your family in front of everyone. I looked around the yard, at the chairs she had arranged, the witnesses she had invited, the lemonade she had poured for her own trial. You invited them. Pastor Elaine lowered her eyes. Aunt Celia stared at my mother like she was seeing the shape of the story change in real time. Grant tried again, weaker now. This got out of hand. We were trying to help Caleb. I took out my phone and set it on the table. I have your voicemail saying my brother needed help and I was never going to give it. Caleb's face flushed. I didn't steal anything. They gave me money. You spent $38,600 on Cancun, flights, dinner packages, and a proposal deposit while my name was on forged documents. He looked at the cousins, then back at me. Angela was expecting this. You don't understand what this is doing to me. For the first time, Aunt Celia's voice sharpened. What it's doing to you? Caleb, shut up. I pulled out the trust document last. Not the fake certificate, the real one. Elias Whitlock Residence Trust, dated 2018. This house was never Mom's to reclaim. It was never Dad's to sign away. It was never Caleb's to spend. It belongs to the trust. I am the successor trustee. The forged papers do not just create a bad sale. They create a criminal record. Marla's eyes filled, but her face stayed hard. You would do this to your own mother. No, I said. You did this. I documented it. Then I read the forfeiture clause aloud in plain language. If any beneficiary tried to obtain, transfer, encumber, or convert trust property through fraud, coercion, forged instrument, or undue influence, that beneficiary forfeited distribution from the Family Reserve Trust. I looked at my mother, then Caleb. That means the $52,000 each of you were supposed to receive can be lost if the fraud is confirmed through the trust process and court findings. Caleb's mouth opened. Mom went still. That was the first moment she looked truly afraid. Aunt Celia turned to Marla. Did you know about the forged power of attorney? My mother said nothing, the silence answered for her. Pastor Elaine picked up her purse from the chair beside her. I think I should go. No one stopped her. I put the papers back into the folder one at a time. Harold Brandt has filed a lis pendens. Cask title to opened a claim. Detective Alvarez has the file. Daniel and Rebecca Prescott are working with their title insurance. I did not come here to ask permission. I came here so you could hear the truth before it became public record. Tessa stood suddenly shaking. You told me she knew, she said to Marla. My mother's tears disappeared. She looked at Tessa with something cold enough to make the whole yard smaller. Caleb raised his voice. You're ruining my life. I picked up the folder. No, Caleb. I'm returning it to the person who made the choices. Grant did not move. My mother did not speak. Aunt Celia stared at the table where the deed had been, as if the paper had left a stain on the wood. I walked through the side gate with the folder against my ribs. For the first time all afternoon I could breathe. When I reached my car, my phone buzzed. It was Daniel Prescott. Cast title just opened the claim. They said the deed may be void. I stood beside my car, the sun hot on the back of my neck, and read the message twice. For the first time since Nora sent me that photograph, Juniper Mill Road stopped moving away from me. Chapter 5, the record does not forget. The claim did not give me the house back overnight. Nothing about the law moved that cleanly. The next months taught me that justice is not a lightning strike. It is a file number, a hearing date, a certified copy, a statement taken under fluorescent lights, and a lawyer who tells you to be patient, when patience feels like another thing being stolen. Harold filed the quiet title action the following week. The lis pendens stayed on Juniper Mill Road like a warning sign no one could paint over. The house could not be sold again, could not be refinanced, could not disappear into another clean story my mother wanted to tell. For the first time, the paper trail worked for me instead of against me. Cask's title kept working with Daniel and Rebecca Prescott. They were confirmed as good faith buyers, which mattered to me more than I expected. They had not taken my grandfather's house from me. My family had used them as the clean faces on a dirty transaction. I met them once more at a coffee shop near downtown Bend. Rebecca looked smaller than she had on the porch, as if the last few weeks had taken weight from her bones. She said they only wanted one quiet house before retirement. I told her I knew Daniel kept turning his wedding ring with his thumb. He said they had already canceled the contractor and stopped all work. Cascade Title had explained that if the deed was void, they probably would not keep Juniper Mill Road, but their title insurance would cover the purchase price, closing costs, reasonable renovation losses, and temporary housing while they found somewhere else. Rebecca apologized for the kitchen. That almost broke me. I told her she did not owe me an apology for believing a stack of documents that professionals had accepted. The people who owed apologies were not in that coffee shop. Detective Luis Alvarez did not move fast, but he moved carefully. He took my statement, then Daniel's, then Rebecca's. He spoke with Priya Raman and Owen Mercer. He pulled my badge logs, payroll record, and the time-stamped photo from May 9th. He collected the closing packet, Tessa's notary journal, my father's voicemail, Caleb's messages about Cancun, and the real trust documents from Harold. The forensic document examiner's final report came in early summer. The signatures on the deed, the limited power of attorney, the certificate of trust, and the seller affidavit were not mine. They had been modeled from an older signature, the kind of signature someone could have copied from a document in a desk drawer. Tessa's notary journal had no valid entry for May 9th. That report did what my pain could not. It made the lie measurable. Mom tried to rescue herself the only way she knew how. In the family group chat, she called it a paperwork confusion. She said I was criminalizing a family mistake. She said outsiders were twisting private grief into legal drama, but this time, the silence around her was different. Aunt Celia stopped answering with little hearts and prayer hands. Pastor Elaine no longer invited Mom to speak during women's fellowship. People at Juniper Chapel still smiled, but the smiles were shorter. My mother had spent years building her image on sacrifice. The public record had started showing what she sacrificed and who paid for it. Dad called once in July. I let it go to voicemail. He said he had not thought it would go this far. He said my mother was not sleeping. He said Caleb was falling apart. He said there had to be a way to fix things without ruining everyone. I saved the message and never played it again. I had finally understood that those words did not mean they were sorry. They meant they had expected to get away with it. The money was messier than the deed. Some of it had gone to Caleb's credit cards, $27,400 that disappeared into balances. He had spent years pretending were temporary. Some went to the Cancun resort, flights, dinner package, and proposal deposit. $38,600 for a life reset bought with my grandfather's porch. The rest had moved through my parents' joint account, bills, transfers, withdrawals, little attempts to make stolen money look ordinary. The title insurer and trust pursued recovery. Dad was not dragged into court and stripped of a retirement account like in some dramatic television scene. It was uglier and more normal. He had to pull from savings, sell the second car, and sign a payment plan as part of restitution. Every month, the consequences came due again. Caleb's consequences were less dignified. Angela Pierce found out that the proposal trip had not come from a family payout or a lucky investment. It came from forged papers on his sister's house. She left him before the resort dates even arrived. The judgment followed him. He could not qualify for the apartment he wanted. His credit got worse. By fall, he was back in my parents' spare room, still insisting everyone had overreacted. Tessa lost her notary commission. A public notary complaint stayed attached to her name. Because she cooperated after the family meeting, her plea was lighter than my parents'. But it was not nothing. Community service, a small restitution amount, and a record she could not explain away as being helpful to family. Detective Alvarez asked if I wanted to say anything about her cooperation. I told him she had told the truth after she helped bury it. That was as generous as I could be. My parents eventually took pleas to felony forgery and real estate fraud-related charges. Because it was their first criminal case, because restitution mattered more than a trial that would drain everyone, and because they admitted enough early enough, they received probation, restitution, and public criminal records. Some people would say probation was too light. Maybe it was. But prison was not the only cage. My mother lost the story she had lived inside. My father lost the comfort of being passive. Caleb lost the future he tried to buy. Their names became searchable in a way their church friends could not politely unsee. After the quiet title ruling, the court confirmed what Grandpa's paperwork had already known. The warranty deed was void. The power of attorney had no effect. The fake certificate gave Grant no authority. Elias Whitlock Residence Trust remained the legal owner of Juniper Mill Road, and I remained the successor trustee. Then Harold sent formal notice under the forfeiture clause. After the quiet title ruling and the criminal findings, the trust administration confirmed that Mom and Caleb had violated the condition by attempting to convert trust property through fraud and forged instruments. They each lost the $52,000 they had expected from the Family Reserve Trust. Grandpa had not shouted from the grave. He had written one paragraph and let their greed walk into it. The forfeited money moved into the reserve purpose he had named: education for skilled trades, construction, carpentry, and civil engineering. Harold helped me establish the Elias Whitlock Skilled Trades Scholarship before the end of the year. When I finally unlocked Juniper Mill Road again, the house smelled like dust, saw cuts, and absence. The green door still stuck slightly near the bottom. The kitchen was torn open in places. Some of Grandpa's cabinet work was gone. The porch rail needed more than stain now. But the swing was still there, hanging from the left side of the porch roof, EW 2012 carved underneath like a pulse. I stood in the entry with the brass key in my hand and felt no triumph. Only grief with a floor under it. I hired licensed contractors for the electrical and plumbing work. I fixed what I could with Grandpa's old tools. I sanded the porch rail myself. I cleaned the swing by hand and left the carving untouched. Beside the front door, I placed a small brass plaque that read Elias Whitlock Residence Trust. Not large, not proud. Just clear. Mom sent a 4-page letter in January. It mentioned shame, church, aging, stress, Caleb's depression, Dad's blood pressure, and the need to rebuild as a family. It did not contain one clean apology. I put it in a file and did not answer. The first scholarship letters arrived in spring. One recipient was an 18-year-old girl who wanted to study structural engineering because she wanted to build bridges that could hold under pressure. In her essay, she wrote that she wanted to build things that hold. I laughed when I read that. Not loudly. Just enough to feel something in me loosened. I put her letter in the desk drawer beside Grandpa's brass key. That evening, I sat on the porch swing while the sun moved low across Juniper Mill Road. The sold sign was gone. The green door was mine to open. The house was not perfect, but neither was I. Both of us had been damaged by people who thought access meant ownership. Grandpa had not saved me with magic. He saved me with trust, paper patience, and the belief that when the time came, I would be steady enough to read what he left behind. My family did not lose because I destroyed them. They lost because the record did not forget. And if your parents forged your name and sold your home, would you ever speak to them again?